I just want to welcome you all. Hello, my name is Chela Montoya, and I'm the Assistant Vice President of Public Programs at LACMA. Welcome to celebrating the 51st anniversary of Cirrus Editions, LA Print Edition 10. We are honored to have Jean Milant with us today, who is the founder of the renowned LA print shop Cirrus Editions, along with LACMA's curator, Leslie Jones. They will have a conversation about the workshop's past and present, including reflections and anecdotes from artists and printers. A little background on LA Print. LA Print is an annual event that celebrates the rich history and vibrant present of printmaking and print publishing in Los Angeles. It was launched in 2010 by the museum's Prints and Drawing Council, and it is now organized in conjunction with the Education Department. And I just want to acknowledge all of our Prints and Drawing Council's members who are here in the audience today. After the conversation, Leslie and Jean will take a few questions from the audience. I will encourage you to type in your questions throughout the program in the chats, and we will do our best to get to as many of those as possible. And I will now like to welcome Leslie Jones, LACMA's curator of prints and drawings, to the virtual stage to share more about LA Print and today's discussion. Please welcome Leslie Jones.
Great, thank you, Cello, and hello everyone, and welcome to LA Print Edition 10, featuring Cirrus Editions. This is, of course, our first ever online version of this program. And while I miss seeing members of our local print community in person, it's very exciting to be able to reach a larger audience. Hello, Washington, D.C., hello, New York City. Welcome to LA Print. To organize such an event is no easy task, however, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank those behind the scenes who helped to make it happen. From Education, Vivian Lin, who took great care with all the preparations, and Chela Montoya, you've just met, as well as Mike Tran from Rights and Reproduction, Han Pham from Events, Chris, Jessen, Connor, and Richie from LACMA's incomparable and overworked AV team. Thank you all very much. Can I have the first slide, please? Tonight's program celebrates 51 years of printmaking at Cirrus Editions. 51 because our plans for a 50th anniversary celebration were foiled by COVID, but I've always preferred odd numbers in any case. And of course, that just means we have even more to celebrate. Here on this first slide, I just wanted to show that's Jean Milant himself in 1970-71 on the left, in the first year of Cirrus's existence. And on the right, a much more recent image of Jean in the center, yours truly on the right, and the artist Derek Bosher at work on a great new lithograph that's on press now. So 51 years. Let's see. Jean and I have put together an extensive presentation filled with images of wonderful prints made at Cirrus, along with documentary photographs and numerous tributes from people who have worked with or at Cirrus over the years. We have a lot to enjoy this evening. So now it is my great honor and pleasure to bring printer extraordinaire and founder of Cirrus Editions, Jean Milant, to the Zoom floor.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Jean. It's quite a moment that we're celebrating. So I'm so glad we could make this happen.
Great.
So by way of introduction, I thought we would just start from the very beginning. Could you maybe tell us a bit about how you first became interested in printmaking and your background before you started Cirrus Editions?
Well, I was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I actually started to get involved with printmaking in high school. I had a very progressive public school. It had just opened, and we had hand lithography and etching and silk screening and all of that actually in high school. So it kind of started there. And then I continued in undergraduate school at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which I had a very big print department as well. And at that time, a lot of my fellow students had gotten the Tamarind grant, which I never heard of. And he was selected to be part of that program and sent to New Mexico, where they were pre-training temp printers before they were sent out to Los Angeles. So I decided to, hey, that'd be great. I'd like to get my MFA at the University of New Mexico. So I applied to get into that university, and I got in. And so it was a very tough school, actually. And they wanted 5 years for an MFA and a huge dissertation and all kinds of other things. And I finished everything very quickly. And actually, they didn't accept my dissertation. They sent it to the philosophy department and the psych department. Philosophy department gave me somebody to like brush it up and everything. I just decided I didn't want to continue. So I had asked if I could go to Tamarind, because I've always wanted to go to LA. And I had a childhood trip with my parents there in the late 50s, and never forgot that. So I got sent to New Mexico, to Los Angeles. So that's how I got here in 1968.
Great, lucky for us. Now, Cirrus has made a name for itself early on through its commitment to local LA-based artists and its embrace of unconventional printmaking techniques. So I thought a good place to start would be this print by Ed Ruscha, made in the first year of Cirrus, which is both by an LA artist and highly unconventional. It is, of course, Pepto Caviar Hollywood. So could you tell us how this print came into being?
Well, Ed was starting to experiment with printing with foods. He did some prints in London with food stuff. And so he wanted to do these 2 Hollywood prints. And so we did a lot of experimenting. This one we ended up using Pepto-Bismol for the sky and Romanov Beluga caviar for the hills. And obviously it was extremely challenging to work with those materials in a silk screen. I mean, it was kind of funny. We had to like take the caviar and separate the little white eggs from the rest of the black eggs. And then I mixed it with a binder of some sort so that I could actually screen it. And it's a very long, narrow run that you had to squeegee across the screen. And I had to make sure that those little eggs crushed as we were like moving across the screen, so they would make these streaks in the hills. And then we had to wash the screen. It took us like 20, 30 minutes to wash the screen every print. So that's technically how it was done.
That's amazing. Can we get the next slide, please? Great, thank you. Now, Jean, you have worked extensively with Ruscha over the years, making 37 prints together. And here I'm just showing you another early print made with him that you can all admire while I read actually a very touching tribute from Ed Ruscha. Ed said in this tribute, he said, "Jean Milant has pounded his internal pavement for over 50 years and never disappointed us in the Los Angeles art community. By my count, Jean has worked with me on 37 of my print projects that wouldn't be the same without his knowledge and patience and attention to detail. He has earned himself the title of master printer to the world."
That's crazy.
That's great. Can we have the next slide, please? Here is a great image of you actually wiping the stone for that very print we just looked at, with fellow printer Ed Hamilton in the background. And Ed Hamilton, who is of course the founder of Hamilton Press, had this remembrance to share. I will read his words. He said, "I met Jean Milant at the Tamarind Lithography Workshop located on Tamarind Avenue in Hollywood, California in 1969. We both were printer trainees along with others, including David Trowbridge, Paul Clinton, and Bill Law. The acceptance for Tamarind was quite stringent, so we were all lucky to have been accepted. After completing his TMP, which stands for Tamarind Master Printer degree, Jean founded Cirrus Editions on Manhattan Place, and I began working for him soon after. A Tamarind influence was definitely there, and June Wayne lent her support in various ways. Cirrus became widely admired for taking risks by publishing artists who were not so well known, along with some very recognizable names. Jean had the most exciting gallery openings ever, and wow, did he make some great prints. So Jean, it seems to me that Cirrus seems to have been a training ground and launch pad for printers. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Was that part of your plan?
Well, some of the people, like Ed had said, had also come from Tamarin. David Trowbridge was also a Tamarin trainee. So they had the knowledge already. And on the other hand, there were people that we brought in that were assistants in the beginning who didn't have the knowledge, which we had to train on the spot. So, so yeah, we did a lot of training. I guess I was the one who did most of the silk screening, although I have all the lithography background as well. But I was more involved in actually doing the prints myself in the silk screening than the lithography. And yeah, so we've always been training people as the time has gone on.
Yeah, I think it's a very important contribution. Can we have the next slide, please? I thought we would look quickly at a few more early experimental projects that you worked on. Another LA artist you worked with was Ed Moses. And again, a very experimental project. And we have Ed Hamilton in the picture.
Right.
Could you tell us about this project? I know it involved several layers.
Well, this was a really crazy project, and Ed was like off the charts with it, actually. So it involved proofing about 6 or 7 actual plates that he drew, and on many different types of substrates like silk tissue, APF tissue, arch, the kind of different print papers. And it was very frustrating. He had an incredibly difficult time, and we had hundreds of these sheets of paper printed with various different colors, and we printed on the front and on the back. We reversed the images both on the front and the back, combined images on different sheets. And I think it was over the Easter holidays that he was terribly frustrated, and he had the key to the workshop, and he went in over the weekend and laid out 7 prints. Well, it took us, I don't know, months to figure out which plate, which color, which paper, whether it was reversed, upside down, or whatever, to try to find out how to actually do the additions. Right. And he was doing paintings with tissue paper at the time, and he's also layering the tissue paper. So this really referenced that work, and as well as a lot of interest in the early 70s as to the American Indian blankets. Right. And this particular print we had, I think this is all silk tissue, and they had to be actually, when they're framed, they had to be pressed to the plastic so that the subsequent underneath colors would come to the surface. And then he wanted to have a fuzzy edge, which none of these papers had. So we had to hand tear rice paper, which was a backing underneath the actual print. And I don't know if you can see on the slide, but it has a very fuzzy edge to it. So it was a quite crazy project.
Yeah, they're quite beautiful and very subtle in person. Have you ever said no to an artist?
I don't remember if I have, yeah.
All right, can we go on to the next slide, please? Here we have a suite of lithographs by Craig Kaufman, and these have sort of a very interesting story behind them. Would you share it with us?
Well, I wanted to work with Craig, and I had seen a show at UCLA with Craig Kaufman and Robert Irwin and Larry Bell and James Turrell. It was a light and space show. And Craig had like actually these little troughs, plastic troughs, laying against the wall on the floor, and he had filled them with water. And then he had little fans moving the water, ripples, and the ripples were reflected onto the actual gallery wall. So I actually at a time was subscribing to Scientific America, and one of these images was on the cover of the magazine. And I thought, wow, this looks really kind of just like what was happening at UCLA. So I approached Craig and asked him if he'd be interested in working with those images. And we were lucky enough to get the rights from the scientists who had made the images. These are the first recording of blood cells on an oscilloscope. And also, you know, there was a lot of, at that time, there was a lot of resistance against photo printing. So these do involve a photo printing of a black run, but then the color was a flat color underneath. So, you know, it was traditional Tamarin that you were not to use any photograph or any offset. Everything had to be hand drawn on plate or stone. So, you know, this is quite different for the time.
Right.
And I didn't really stick to anything. I would do anything the artist wanted. So, if, you know, whatever they wanted to do, I would do.
Right, that's great. Can we have the next slide, please? And Vija Selmans. Now, by comparison, this seems like a much more conventional kind of print, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And working with Via was not conventional.
Well, she sent in a very nice tribute that I would like to read. Vija said, when Jean opened his press, Cirrus Editions, so long ago, I was one of the first artists who he invited to make prints. I did about 6 lithographs with Jean and really enjoyed working on the beautiful stones. I had done one lithograph at Tamarin Press the year before in 1970. I worked on and off at Cirrus for about 4 years before moving on to other work in my studio. Jean and I stayed friends, but I never returned to making lithographs again. He was a good, honest dealer, and happy to hear you are celebrating him. Good to know you're honest, Jean. Could we have the next slide, please? All right. Joe Good. This is an image of Joe in front of his studio that he sent in to us, and you'll understand why in a second. I'll read what Joe had to say. He said, Jean stopped by the studio to see if I wanted to make prints with him. It was great because the studio was right around the corner of the shop back when it was on Manhattan Place in the 70s. It was very pleasant and convenient. And pleasantness and convenience matters, right? Because you went on to make many prints together.
I think we've done more
together.
prints so good than any artist yet.
Yeah, more than any other artist, right? Could we have the next slide, please? So here are images of editions from the 70s on top, and on the bottom of the slide, prints, if you can call them that, from the Gunshot series made in the early 1980s. Is there a story behind the Gunshot series? I'm sure there is.
Well, there's actually the long print was quite a technical feat for the time because that was done on plates and hand rolled, and it's actually 10 feet long in 3 panels. So to be able to hand roll that rainbow roll across each sheet separately and have them match up as the editions were pulled was quite difficult. Joe did a lot of work with very physical alterations to canvas, and we've followed that kind of trajectory with him. So some of the project we did where he had 2 canvases, an under canvas and then a canvas on top, and then he would tear the top canvas and rip it and reveal the under canvas. And he did a whole series, the same thing with taking canvas and painting it and then taking razor blade and scratching it, making white lines and revealing the cloth. So this project was done with handmade paper that we had made at Twin Rocker in Indianapolis. And like the object was to change the paper color to the opposite paper color. So in other words, the right one has the blue paper underneath it and the left one has the red paper under it. And so then he revealed the color of the paper by, he was up in Potterville. I think he'd moved up to Potterville. The studio was there. And we took the prints in sort of like sections, like maybe 10 prints at a time. And we strapped them to a bale of hay. And then Joe got up on the loft in the barn and shot a .410 shotgun at them. So each print is totally unique. And you know, it was quite an experience. Sometimes they did fly all over the place, but we got them back together.
That's great. I just love that you were willing to do that. Can we have the next slide, please? And this I just want to include because it's a much more recent print that you've done with Joe, just to show sort of the continuity of the artists that you've worked with over the years.
Right. This is the last print we did with Joe, and we have been doing a lot of experimenting with Epson inkjet printers and combining them with lithography and silk screening. So this was actually, the photo is a photo, the curtains are a photo. Joe was taking photos over the years of his travels in hotel curtains. So that was digitally printed. And the bottle is a photograph from an actual sculptural bottle that he is using in his paintings. And it's like they covers them with silicone, and we took a photo of that separately. And then I didn't really like the way the background color was when it was inkjet printed, so we silk screened a very transparent flat on top of the entire background, which gave it a lot more richness and sort of depth. And then the bottle was cut out from the background, and it was, no, I guess one was transparent and one, yeah, there was a transparent printing. So it has actually a rainbow roll lithography printing on top of it.
Wow.
So that's why you go from the blue up to the gray.
Right. And with all of these, of course, they're much more, you know, there's much more to be had if you see them in person. So, and your Cirrus is open right now, Jean. So you can visit him and see these prints in person. Can we have the next slide, please? So here we are looking at photographs from a Guy de Cointet performance that took place at Cirrus Gallery, which we're going to hear more about here in a minute. The photos were taken by Gus Foster, who sent in another nice remembrance that I'm going to read now. He said, Jean and I met when I was still curator of prints and drawings at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts in 70 or 71. I moved to LA in 72 and had a place I rented from Joe Good just around the corner from Jean's first studio and gallery. It was quite the neighborhood.
Right.
I went to his shop frequently to watch editions in progress and recall taking photos of Ed Ruscha clowning around, standing on one of the printing presses. I didn't make any prints with Cirrus, but I had a show of my panoramic photographs at his gallery in 1989. He's been a longtime friend, and ever since his days as a gallerist, I photographed most of Eric Orr's shows, as well as those of Guy de Cointet that you're looking at now, and attended most of the Cirrus shows between 72 and 76 when I lived there. His was one of the premier lithography studios on the West Coast, and I'm pleased that his archives are part of the LACMA collection and that you are honoring his many accomplishments in the making and support of contemporary printmakers and artists. So, Gus and others actually mentioned the importance of the shows you organized, and the gallery aspect of Cirrus is perhaps less well known than its printmaking and publishing side.
Right.
So could you tell us more about the gallery, especially why you felt the need to show and promote work in addition to your print publications?
Well, at that time, there were very few galleries who were actually concentrating on California artists. I mean, I think that most of the galleries had a group of New York artists and some European artists, and then maybe one or two California artists. And I really, you know, California was Los Angeles in particular was my passion. And so I was very lucky to meet someone like Ed Ruscha and Ed Moses and those people at Tamarind. And Ed Moses took me around to see a lot of artist studios and everything. So I really got a big overview. And then I opened the workshop first, and then a year later, I opened the gallery. And we showed performance, we showed installations, we showed painting, we showed sound works. So yes, it was a lot of experimental work, and everybody was a Los Angeles artist. So a lot of the people I hung around with were from the Irvine School at that time, Chris Burden and Charles Hill and Alexis Smith and Maria Nordman, etc. And this particular show is, I think, the second show we did with Guy de Cointet, who had met Larry Bell in New York, and Larry Bell said, come out to California. He was working for Larry Bell, and Larry said I should go take a studio visit with him. And Guy comes from France. His family is military since Napoleon, and everything he does is coding. And he remained anonymous an artist. So that was very challenging at that time. So the photo on the left is like his painting show, and everything. If you can break those codes, you can read what these paintings say. And he remained anonymous, so he invited Viva, Andy Warhol's Viva, who was living in Topanga, to come and give a story about her new painting. So she gave like a half-hour talk. The photo on the right, were two performers, and this painting is called Lost at Sea. And he hired two commercial actresses, one older and one very young. And so this again was another story about, you know, what these paintings were saying, sort of. During this show, the other painting was the first time that actually he kind of let people into how the codes might work, or there was actually really content in this painting. And it was like a story going through the forest at 35 miles an hour, and they would point like to the green on one part of the frame for the forest, and like the number 35 in the painting, and the name Abdul, etc. But he's never really actually revealed how to decode these.
Right. Still a
Yeah.
mystery. Yeah.
It's being reinvented or brought out really big time now, because actually everything is coded. He
Right.
passed away in the 80s, and he has his archives at the Pompidou Center in New York. I mean, in Paris. So it was exciting working with Guy. And then we produced his first 3-act play at Barnsdale, and he went on to make plays because that's what he really wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. No, I've heard amazing things about these performances and the works of his that you've shown.
Look at the painting on the left,
LACMA is acquired, by the way.
all the numbers, they could very much be internet addresses.
Right. Let's type them in, Howie.
Yeah. And his family was military since Napoleon, so they've all been generals. Yeah. So he could have, during World War II, been overhearing things, you know, in the house from stuff his father was being sent.
Right.
But I do know that when we had an opening, the janitors were still there in the morning cleaning up, because we had these huge openings. And the guy asked me if he was a cryptologist, and I said, well, he said he is. And he said, oh yeah, this is straight out of the military code books.
Interesting.
So it is.
Lita Albuquerque has some really nice things to say about your gallery program as well. And she actually submitted a video clip. So why don't we run that now?
I'm really excited to be part of this program with Jean and the 50-year anniversary of Cirrus Editions. I've known Jean Milant since 1968, when we were both at the Tamarind Lithography Workshop, where I met a huge amount of artists who also, some of them ended up in his stable for his gallery that he opened in the mid-70s. That was really an extraordinary gallery that showed the most cutting-edge artists. I'm still thinking about the Eric Orr copper room installation that he had, and numerous other artists that were really an education for me, and it was just wonderful that it was there. And then he opened Cirrus Editions. I started working prints with Jean since 1989. I've had the privilege to do that. And now we're here at the 50-year anniversary. I'm so proud to be part of that. And I'm also so excited to know him. And he is truly a pillar of the Los Angeles art scene. So, there I am. I didn't say my name. My name is Lita Albuquerque.
Yes, thank you. So Barbara T. Smith was another artist involved in your gallery program. And these are installation shots of field piece. And I'd like to read what Barbara had to say. She said, in 1972, John exhibited my huge sculptural environment called Field Piece. His was the only space big enough and daring enough to do so. It was a 20 by 24 square foot field of 184 giant 9-foot tall fiberglass blades through which one could walk, thus triggering a drone of sound and lights under each blade. And though this was a printmaking business, this was not a print, nor would it be easily saleable. In recent years, he has published several of my prints using a mix of traditional and digital technology. Cirrus has been on the leading edge of art making for all these years. That from Barbara Smith.
Very nice.
So I'm sure this installation had some challenges as well.
Well, they actually built a computer that was about 20 feet long to run a few sounds and lights. But
Yeah, this is 1972. We have to remind everyone. So that
Uh,
was no.
so yeah, Barbara handmade all of those pieces. She was another student at Irvine at the time, and it didn't survive over time. I think that there are about 15 of the actual blades of grass that still exist, and I think they're in the Hammer collection now.
That's correct.
And
Yes.
I think they run the whole thing with a cell phone.
That's amazing. Can we get the next slide, please? So Barbara in her tribute mentioned more recent print editions, and that's what we're looking at here now. On the left is a recent print edition you've done with Barbara, and on the right, Barbara and you at work.
Right. Since Barbara was predominantly, after that installation we did in '72, she really was a performance artist. That was her main thing. And I wanted her to still do something performative. So this print on the left is done in a scanner. And I had her moving her hands in the scanner. And then I was holding a 1970 something Xerox portrait. She did a lot of Xerox work when the Xerox machine came out above her hands. And so it was really kind of exciting to see how the scanner actually acts as a camera. It's like quite different. And these are quite beautiful. Like we did 4 in the series. And then on the right is her using, she used a lot of rosers in 2 of the other prints with her hands and body. And so you see the roses on the scanner. And we would take many different versions, like she would move them around a lot and we'd capture them and then we'd, digitally alter them later. So it's quite an involved process.
Right. Yeah, it's the participants, you can see there's this beautiful ghostly image in the print.
Right.
But always best to see them in person. Something I've noticed.
They're quite large too.
Yes.
The prints are quite large.
Something I've noticed, and it's really to your credit, is the great number of artists who returned to Cirrus over the years. So we've already looked at Ed Ruscha, Joe Good, Barbara T. Smith, of course, and others. Can we go to the next slide? And Judy Chicago, who you worked with also very early on.
Right.
She sent in a great remembrance. She said, although I've created more than 100 prints over the course of my career, my experience at Cirrus stands out. Even though it was 40 years ago, I can still remember working with Mary Sundstrom, the printer, who I used to call Mary Sunshine. She was one of the first women to try and complete the then male-dominated master print program at Tamarind, the legendary litho shop founded by the irascible June Wayne. Even the term reveals the prevailing gender bias, she says. At the time, I was working on a series of images honoring women from history, which prefigured the dinner party, my best known work now permanently housed at the Brooklyn Museum. At Cirrus, I did a lithograph titled Mary, Queen of Scots, which at first I wasn't happy with. Jean suggested overlaying the print with a pale flat that rendered the image as restrained and constrained as its subject's life, a perfect visual analog to the lives of so many women of her time. I think that was a very wonderful feminist approach to, reading this image.
I think we probably were the first workshop to have a female printer too.
Oh, that's great. Mary Sundstrom. Okay. And then, so Judy, you worked with very recently too. If we can have the next slide, please. This great, powerful print.
This is her 80th birthday print.
That's great. All right, and still another artist who's come back to Cirrus. If we can have the next slide. Alan McCullum. And Alan sent in these words. He said, Jean Milant is an artist, and doing a project with Cirrus Editions back in 1974 is one of my best memories. So let me do some things that were not typically normal for a print edition. We made each of the 50 in the edition slightly different in color and texture, among other odd things. The wonderful silkscreen printer Jean Milant, who oversaw and managed all the production techniques, was so good to work with, and it was nice to get to know the great Connie Llewellyn better, as she also worked there at the time. Jean developed projects for artists that other printmakers might have found too odd, and his gallery put up exhibitions that were so wonderfully experimental and also held events that opened everyone's minds to new ways of thinking. His efforts were not solely to attract art collectors by any means, but mainly to interest artists, which made his gallery a very special place. My favorite memories include surprising animated work by Raul Guerrero and amazing performances by Guy de Quante. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I lived there until I was 30 and then moved to New York. I get homesick for Los Angeles all the time, and what I do when it gets really bad is I visit the Cirrus website, and it cheers me up so much. John's huge focus on Los Angeles artists is one of the things that makes him so great. He's one of my favorite people. So that's a very touching tribute. He visits your website when he misses LA.
Great. That's cool.
Can we have the next slide, please? So I just want to show this because I know this is what you're working on at the moment, actually, in the shop. This is a yet to be titled print edition, if we can call that, by Alan McCullum. And would you mind, John, telling us a little about it, because it's distinct and unusual in good ways.
Right. Never. Everything is totally unique. He might do one piece that's 7,000 little objects laid out on a table, but each object is unique, but it's one work. So he's done a lot of work like that. He just recently had a retrospective at the Contemporary Museum in Miami. And the first print was also unique and was very kind of difficult to do. We had to mimic notebook paper with fine art paper. So we had to actually print the silk screen, and then each one had different color glitter and different color printings on it. And then we had to put them in a ring thing that we actually pulled the sheets out. We had to cut them up, pull them out, so you mimic like a notepad pad paper being pulled out. And then we affixed them and lined them up onto a backing paper. So this is his newest print. And again, each one of the prints, there will be 50 in the edition. Each print has 72 unique shapes on it. And you can see on the right that he also wanted to sign each shape. So there are 4,700 plus images that he made to do this edition. We printed them out on inkjet with a larger sheet of paper, and the whole concept was important to him because he'd never worked with a torn edge. So each little shape has a torn edge in the rectangle, and then we back them with the paper for mounting them, and send them to him in New York. And then he signs them and sends them back, and then we place them in the color background grid, and they have to be the exact order of each way he wants them to be as well. So we're still working on this project, but we should be seeing the light of day soon. So each print will be totally unique and signed 72 times.
Right. No, that's amazing. It almost seems to defy the very note, the multiple. But that's Alan McCullum for you. All right, can we have the next slide, please? Just quickly, another artist who you worked with over the years, John Baldessari in the 1970s. This from the Raw Print series. And the next slide. Yes, thank you. In the 80s, Fallen Easel, which you can see is, again, very unconventional, comprised of multiple elements, kind of composite work. Some are framed, others not. Is there anything you'd like to say briefly about working with Jean?
Well, technically, this was fairly challenging.
Yeah.
The center panel with the man holding the gun is a 4-color offset print that we printed on the Mylander and on fine art paper. which is almost impossible to get a really good image because fine art paper is fuzzy, and most offset prints are done on a very slick or glossy paper, thin. The right panel with the three men and the dots is actually done on a very glossy, slick paper, so it's very much like an offset print would be. The left panel was bigger than we could actually print on the press, so it's actually made up of two panels. And then the top section is made up 5 pieces of metal that was printed on a large sheet of aluminum that was painted white, and then we printed the image, which is from all those images come from other sources. So that one came from me. And then we had them cut, we had them lacquered, and then we had them cut into the strips. And then they get hung so the sight lines are matching up with the eyesights of each person in the composition. And it's quite large.
Yeah, of course, it's a wonderful print.
Right piece, yeah, of his.
Could we have the next slide, please? So the specialness of the LA vibe in the 70s and your role in it has been noted by many. And Bernard Jacobson, a British print dealer and publisher that you worked with, has offered his view as a foreigner. And the reason we're showing this is because this is one of the prints that you worked together on. Bernard writes, to me, an outsider from London, I found Jean Milant and Cirrus central to the entire idea of Los Angeles. Its small yet lively art world filled with an innocence and originality and wonder. It was very much its own world on the Pacific with its magnificent sunsets, ocean, highways and byways, its exotic palms. Jean was a quiet and discreet chap who understood all that, and even more so, understood the demands of its artist. The quiet mastery of Jean was a thing of magic, how he eked out the very best of those downright beautiful lithographs from the youngsters of the day, Joe Good, Ed Ruscha, Ed Moses. Those are the names Jean and I were jointly involved in together. Of course, I am talking of a time that has long gone, the early 70s, when all we cared about was producing the best art possible. Money was not something that needed to be discussed too much, only to make the difficult not difficult, and to allow magic to appear on a sheet of virgin paper. And magic did happen over and over again. Perhaps Ken Tyler down the road on Melrose got the glamour and nearly all the attention, but Jean made the magic happen. So Bernard is referring, of course, to Ken Tyler, the founding master printer at Gemini and GEL. And I'm curious, Jean, to know, was there actually any sort of rivalry, or were you all just doing very different things?
Yes, there was some rivalry.
That's healthy.
I mean, I do know that I worked first with Bruce Nauman, and then he, moved over to Gemini, and I never worked with him again. I mean, there were issues like that. Baldessari, the same. No one was interested in Baldessari. We worked with him first in 1976 with the raw prints, and those were his first really series of prints that he'd ever had published. And then I think after the Fallen Easel, with the success with that, Gemini got involved in working with him then. So yes, we did have a bit of back and forth.
It's hard to be the avant-garde, John. Can we have the next slide, please? All right, so now we have a couple of tributes from those who worked for you, which is always, can be very revealing, of course. Pablo Prietto, who you see pictured here second from the left, in a group that also features printers Richard Hammond, Francesco Siqueiros, and yourself on the right. Pablo wrote, Jean could and should write a book. When I worked for Cirrus, there was always something interesting and eye-opening happening. It was great to witness and learn about the printmaking process as Jean and the master printers would work with a wide variety of artists like Ed Ruscha, John Baldessari, Karen Carson, and Peter Alexander, to name a few. It is a rare opportunity to see artists at work and see the evolution of initial idea to a finished piece or series. With Jean's track record and impeccable eye, Cirrus was always able to attract all kinds of artists in various stages in their careers. Having been a witness to and a key participant in the art scene in Los Angeles since the 70s, Jean is a treasure trove of knowledge, insight, and entertaining stories about the city's growth to its prominence in the art world. Next slide, please. So next we have a remembrance from Terry Inch, someone else who worked for you and who actually took these photographs of you at the Art Basel Fair in 1974. Jean Milant is first and foremost an artist. When I first met John in early 71, my wife and I were sticking our toes into collecting. I had heard about Cirrus and wanted to know more as our early focus was on younger LA artists. Jean took me under his wing and a friendship was born. I would hang out in his way whenever I had a chance, and he shared his understandings of potential in printmaking, supporting younger artists, exposing their works in his large gallery, and the joy which he experienced in doing so. In 1974, Jean invited me to attend the Basel Art Fair with him, and I got to experience all of the hard work that goes into designing a booth, the networking, excitement, and rewards of attending a major art fair. And in 1979, the print shop and gallery moved to downtown LA into an old warehouse on Alameda Street. Jean created a complete workshop and gallery space, as well as a fantastic upper floor loft living space full of light and tall potted trees. His visions never failed. To me, Jean's dedication to the creation of fine art was validated in 1986 when LACMA acquired the Cirrus archives, put on the Cirrus Perspective in 1995, and published an award-winning catalog. Jean's legacy was assured. I have never lost contact with my dear friend and thrill at learning what he is interested in and what he sees in the future. Jean is not only an art visionary, he's at heart always an artist, as all art starts with a vision. So, John, my sense is that the art fairs were not as international in scope as they are today, back in the 70s. So were many others showing LA-based artists at the time?
Well, I first took my first European business trip was in 1972. I'd heard about the Basel Art Fair. Actually, Terry and his wife, we went together, and I think was a documenta at that time too, and which did have a lot of LA artists in it actually. That particular documenta 5, I think. And so I had heard, I worked a lot with, I had a lot of support from the East Coast, from New York, and Castelli and Sonnabend and a lot, and Brooke Alexander, et cetera. And they were all participating in the Basel Art Fair. And I don't know if Gemini came in what year they first started or if we were there together. My first year was 1973, and there weren't any print sections. I tried to get, I was always the huge promoter of Los Angeles and tried to bring it onto the international art stage, which it really was not on. It was sort of insular and isolated. So I figured if I had a good eye and I had to be next to Leo, or I had to be next to so-and-so from Paris or Germany or whatever, and had let them judge about what I was doing, because I wanted, to be in that ball court. And so I couldn't get any of the other LA galleries to go. And I figured that I think there were 9 galleries from New York that attended to the Basel Art Fairs during those 70s. And I think at most there was just myself and Gemini that actually came from LA. So my feeling was, if there's only 9 from New York and there are 5 of us from LA, then we're making a point, and we're showing what really is happening in LA. But it never did happen. LA never really got the idea of fairs, the other dealers here, and how important they were. I can tell you that I had unknown artists like David Trowbridge and Charles Hill and Gene Sturman, and that I showed in Basel, and I had collectors fighting over the paintings when I could hardly get anybody in LA to look at them. So it was very refreshing, and I also developed a network of dealers in Italy, Switzerland, and France that were actually doing one-person shows of the artists that I was handling. So that was, that was my purpose, was to get LA outside of LA into the international ball court.
Right, right.
So I've done fairs all along since then, and encouraged everybody else to do them as well.
Right, and just to identify some of the artists that you were showing at Art Basel, we have, of course, Bruce Nauman, Ron Guerrero, Guido Quante, Karen Carson, Chris Burden.
That was the portfolio called LA 75.
Right. Can we have the next
Ellen
slide?
McCullum was in that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Just I wanted people to have a better view of some of the artists that you were showing. So here on just Karen Carson on the left and Chris Burden on the right, which are both quite edgy prints, I have to say.
Right. And there weren't a lot of other, a lot of the publishers were really interested in publishing young Los Angeles artists.
Right.
Or women artists.
Right. Okay, I'm
Or
very
artists
sensitive
of color.
to, sorry, Jean, to interrupt you. I'm just sensitive to the time here. We've got 10 minutes left and many years to go. So if we can have the next slide, please. We have this tribute that Salome sent in. Salome, of course, is someone who you worked with more recently, in 2011 to 2017.
Right, Salome.
Someone who I got to know
Right.
since our time in LA has overlapped. She was just very generous in saying, you know, how wonderful you were to work with, and that even though she had absolutely no art fair experience, you took her on and kind of showed her the ropes and taught her a lot about the LA art world. And I'm guessing that this is after a very long day at Miami Art Basel.
Right.
On the beach, right?
Yes.
Or it's the next morning after you
It's early in the morning before we go to the fair raid.
All right, can I have the next slide, please? I just want to introduce very quickly, this is a video clip from Francesco Siqueiros, one of the, another printer that you took on and trained and who has subsequently gone on to start his own shop, El Nepal Press. So please run the video.
So he hired me in 1986, and I think he had just acquired a Milander press, which was at the time, those presses were still probably under the jurisdiction of the presses from hell, because they were offset presses. And so the first project that I came in to assist was a print by Jed Garrett. And so that one was like landing sort of in a learning curve, which was very fast, you know, learning how to assist on this huge press that was very scary to look at. You often wonder whether you were going to be run, you were going to get like run over by this mammoth of a press. So Cirrus was my really my first professional place. As more hands-on than the other publishing houses, Cirrus and Los Angeles Press. And I would say that that's where I learned how to interact with the artists and learn much of what I know now at El Nepal Press, which I founded in 1990. So I have to give Jean Milant great credit for taking me on, and one thing led to the other. You know, I started El Nepal Press, and then there was an opportunity to leave without too much fuss or creating any kind of misfortune at Cirrus, and the rest is history.
Yes, the rest is history. Just to follow up on Francesco's mention of your mammoth press, Jean, you shared with us a video clip of it in action. So can we show that now? I think Francesco's description is quite accurate. You do feel like you're going to get run over. And of course, that's the print working on a Cinque and Zube print that we will see in just a few short minutes. Can we have the next slide, please? All right, so this is the image of the Jed Garrett print that Francesco mentioned, and one of another printer, Richard Hammond, at work on the left. And Garrett has California roots, I know, but was based in New York at this time. So I was wondering if you could say a few words about your expanding scope beyond LA beginning in the 1980s.
Well, I decided that pretty much when the internet came into being, that you began to see there wasn't that much difference between the art that was made in different locales. And so I kind of, you know, in the 70s, LA was really different than what you saw anyplace else. But now everybody's kind of on the same page instantly. I mean, it wasn't quite as instant then as it is now, like with Jed, but like, so I started to look into other young artists in New York, and it was during the time at the East Village when that started. And Jed was showing with Robert Miller, a very prominent gallery at the time. And this is another huge example of, like, you know, technical feat with the rainbow and lining up the two panels so that the images would meet, etc. So yeah, I did Jed Garrett, and I think you have a slide coming up of Joan Nelson. And
Yeah. The next slide, please.
she's also another East Village artist that I worked with, and you know, she had never done a print before, and these were appropriated because appropriation was the big thing at that time. So these are appropriated from, you know, 1800s German landscape painters, and she was very innovative in what she drew with. She drew with baby powder, Vaseline, all kinds of things.
Really?
And she did, you know, a series of like 4 prints and many colors, like many printings in a matter of 2 weeks. It was quite amazing watching her work, and they're incredibly beautiful works.
Yeah.
And I think
All right.
we also,
In the next slide, please, in which we have some monoprints by Dennis Hollingsworth, who is based in New York City and Spain. And he actually sent us a video tribute just like moments before he flew off to Spain a month or so ago. So could we run Dennis's video, please?
Jean Milant, a very special guy, worldly, incisive, funny. He has a very deep well of knowledge about the art scene, an active player in the art scene since the 70s in Los Angeles, showing Guy de Conte and Robert Overby and Ed Ruscha, Bryce Martin, Karen Carson, just in the 70s alone. And I love picking his brain about events in his life, like the time that Chris Burden nailed himself to the Volkswagen, for example, stuff like that. I'm living in New York now, and I love it. I love it when I get news that Jean's coming into town, and we get to spend a few days cruising the galleries and thinking and talking about art together. He's a very special guy, very challenging, very just a wonderful intellect, a special friend, a very solid guy, and a treasure of the Los Angeles art scene, the art scene of the world. So, Jean Milant. I love Jean.
We've got lots of fans, John.
Dennis is a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Done some really great prints with us, and I really enjoyed being with him and working with him. And
All right, so picking it up again, I just want to mention that because you started, you know, working with New York artists and artists from other places, that didn't mean you stopped working with LA artists. So I just wanted to show this print by Larry Pittman. And the next slide. And this work, of course, by Lita Albuquerque, one of her beautiful celestial visions that involves gold leaf, and I know some involve silver leaf. And I assume that's all hand done, right?
yes, it's all, you know, hand applied gold leaf, right?
Right. No, they're beautiful. And next slide, please. Finally, I'm showing you actually a few installation shots from Made in LA, the Prince of Cirrus edition, which was held at LACMA on the occasion of Cirrus's 25th anniversary in 1995. And also celebrated, of course, the acquisition of Cirrus Archives. And it was curated by my predecessor, the late Bruce Davis. Jean, do you think, did you think then that you'd be making prints for another 25 years?
No, I'm not sure. No, I didn't. But I don't think I'm going to stop.
You can't stop now. All right, so let's kind of finish up by looking at some more recent editions. This is a great series, again, of monoprints by Jason Meadows. You can see him at work here on the left. Actually using actual fern leaves, right, Jean?
Yeah, he had a great graphic sense. I mean, some of the linear patterns in this are actually 6-pack holders that we printed from. And then there's like pennies he threw onto the screen and fern leaves. And he used foam core, punched with hammers, and just amazing materials that we made the prints from.
Right. That's great. And the next slide. Mark Bradford. I believe these are probably some of the earliest prints he made, right?
These are this is a monoprint, but it would come from a series of 3 prints beforehand. And these are the first prints that he ever did. And so this is like, we did a series of monoprints a year after he did the first 3 using cast-offs from the first 3. And he used the actual material that he used in his paintings, which were these tissue papers that they use in hairdressing, because he was a hairdresser also. And so it has lithography, it has silk screening. The image of the house is, or it's the hair salon that his mom owned in Lymet Park that he worked at. So we're waiting to do more prints with them.
Mark, if you're watching. All right, next slide, please. All right, and of course, Jonas Wood. Here we're showing 2 images on the left, one early print you did with him in 2009, and on the right, more recently, a print from 2019. And Jonas is a big fan and has sent in a nice video clip. So let's run that.
Hey, it's Jonas Wood. Happy 50th anniversary, Jean. I've known John since 2006 when he came to my studio and he asked me to be in a 3-person painting show at his gallery on Alameda. And Jean sold the paintings and he's like, I want to work with you more. And I was like, I want to make prints. And he's like, sorry, too bad. And I said, okay. And then 3 years later, after I'd done a couple shows in New York City, and I had kept painting and doing well, I asked Jean, hey, can I make prints? And he said, sure, let's make some prints. And so I was interested just right off the bat in Jean because of the Rouchet prints he had made and the Baldessari prints and a bunch of other prints that are in his archive that I had seen when I first started finding out who he was. In 2009, we made 3 lithographic still life prints that are basically my first foray into like edition printmaking or lithography or anything like that. So Jean taught me everything about how it works. My experience was always great when we got into silk screening and photo lithography, and that whole experience was great. And then the last couple of years we've made some more complicated like still lifes that had some elements of sort of all the things we've been working on since 2009 when we first started working together. And yeah, happy anniversary, Jean. It's been a pleasure working with you. Looking forward to working more in the future.
Very nice. Love working with Jonas. He loves making prints.
Yeah, no, it's nice to have such a well-established, known and well-known artist like Jonas committed to print. Yeah. All right, our last slide, please. So here it's showing a work of Zimpwe and Zube on the right, very recent edition from 2021, and the artist at work on the left. And Zimpwe wrote in this, he said, it was an interesting experience working with Jean and his team and learning about the history of collaborations with his print workshop and gallery over the years. All of his stories about the work with artists such as John Baldessari and Jonas Wood is a history of art and printmaking in LA that I wouldn't have otherwise learned about. It opened up to an even better understanding of the importance of printmaking and its process and distribution. But most importantly, Jean said to me that it's going to be interesting to see how the reverse way of building an image will influence my work going forward. So that from Zimpwe. All right. So I know we've gone well over our scheduled time, and I thank people who've stuck in there with us. It's hard to cover 51 years in 45 minutes. Let's just say it.
I think you did a great job. Thank you.
Yes, I'd love to share a few questions that we collected throughout the run. So if you can bear with us a few more minutes. And thank you, Jean Milant, for this extensive history and for sharing all these wonderful details. One of the questions was, why do you think the late 60s and 70s were such a rich time for printmaking? From Claudia, James Brett.
Well, from my understanding, I think that LA has been really the source of that, because June Wayne was an artist and she wanted to make prints, and she couldn't find any place in America really to have her prints made, so she would go to France to have them made at the same Merlot, the same studios that worked with Miro and Picasso, etc. And she was responsible for establishing the Tamarind Lithography Workshop in, I guess, late 50s. I'm not sure the date. But her whole purpose was to reinvent printmaking in America, which she did incredibly successfully. Most of the people that came through Tamarind really, are the ones that established the workshops and went into school to teach. She trained printers like myself, and she trained curators. So we went through every aspect of the whole thing of establishing workshops and making sure you had inks that were light fast and etc. So Ken Tyler came out of Tamarind, and he expanded it further. And I think that was a period when also collectors couldn't buy a Lichtenstein or couldn't buy an artist, Jasper Johns or whatever. And so Ken was making these incredible prints, expanding the size of prints, not just small prints that you put in a drawer, and doing very experimental things. He's a genius in printmaking. And I think that it just kind of grew from there, and it was a huge renaissance. Most galleries had their own print area, even the galleries were handling the original artists. And it kind of, it just was amazing how much she was responsible for reestablishing the art of printmaking.
Beautiful.
So LA really is the birthplace of that, I think.
Beautiful. Another technical question, with regard to the edition size, and is there a rhythm or rhyme to maybe why you select a certain run of prints? Maybe if you can share an example or two of one of your favorite runs and why.
Well, there really isn't. I think we established in the beginning, Ed Ruscha liked to do fairly large editions actually in the beginning. So a lot of his editions were 80, or even the gas stations were edition of 150, 100 and 250. And they're some of his greatest images. I always remind people that they always complain about, oh, it's such a big edition size. It's not so much the edition size, this is a great work of art. And that's what counts, because these are some of his most sought after prints. On the other hand, there's very small editions he's done as well. We tend to stay under 100 in most cases and more around 40 or 50. But it's just, I guess it's arbitrary. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I hope that answers the question. And also the artist has some influence too. Maybe the artist wants to have a larger edition and one really wants only very few.
Great. And then finally, do the artists you work with typically have printmaking backgrounds, or can you tell us a little bit more about the apprenticeship within that process?
Some of them do. Like Ed Ruscha is like, graphic genius. He knows exactly what he wants, yet he experiments a lot, but it's really, he knows exactly what he wants, and he knows how to put it together. Someone like Mark Bradford had never done a print, and he doesn't really paint or draw. So we had a very hard time translating into the process where you have to make different layers for each color, and you don't get to see how they work together until you actually print it. So, that was maybe a little difficult for him in the beginning. But when we got to the mono prints, that opened up, his eyes to another way of doing things. And like with Simple, this recent print we did, he'd never done a print before. And he's a painter, but he also draws. And he just took to it right away with no, experience. We gave him the materials, we showed him what materials he should work with, and it's a fantastic print. It's like, so yes, there's like some people we have more of a learning curve, and other people less, but we, do whatever it's necessary to make a great work.
And I just want to say thank you so much to Leslie for the team who put this together with the Prince edition, and to Jean Milant. Congratulations once again. You're in great company, and there's a lot of congratulations in the chat, and hope you all will continue to follow his work. And thank you so much for sharing this celebration with LACMA.
Thank you.